Hello there. I've been asked a number of times to explain how my Microsoft Flight Simulator setup works using a Stream Deck, the X-Touch Mini and a piece of software called Axis and Ohs. It's going to take a number of videos to do it in depth, but part one I'll just give you an overview to see if this is the sort of thing that interests you. I'll do more in-depth videos later on each of the components. So firstly, a quick look around the gear that I've got. I've got a Logitech yoke and a throttle quadrant, and underneath the table I've got some CH pedals, really old but they still work fine. I do use a 2-monitor setup. I usually have my flight plan, other bits of software on the right hand side, and I usually fly with the head tracker. I won't today because it's really hard to film with it, everything keeps moving around. If you've not seen the head tracker, there's an infrared receiver that sits on top of the monitor and it has to detect your head movements, so you get these reflectors that you can stick on a hat, or for a bit extra you can buy some infrared LEDs that connect your headphones, and they're really accurate. I need to use those if it's a sunny day. That's my Stream Deck. It's a set of programmable buttons. You can add graphics to the buttons, little mini LED screens, and this is really a MIDI controller. It's from my music system, but it's now used all the time for Flight Simulator. Just to remind what the buttons actually are, I've made a template and it's really hard to stick back on with one hand. Let's try and get that a bit tidier. That'll do for now. Okay, so the Stream Deck. I use it for a number of bits of software, not just the Flight Simulator, but today Flight Simulator, and it's running already, so I don't need to start it, but I do need to choose which plane I'm flying, and I'll use the Cessna 172, and you can see that it's already programmed up with all the switches and some dials, so I can control the cockpit from here. So let's turn the beacon on. If I click on here, beacon switches on the screen, and it also reflects back onto the graphic on the button. You can see when it's on and when it's off. And equally, if I click on the screen to turn a switch on and off, it reflects back on the switch as well. You can see it on the switch on the Stream Deck, which is really useful. So let's get started. Let's turn the beacon light on and we'll check the fuel cutoff, and that's fine. I've already set the mixture and throttle, so let's turn the fuel pump on. And I can't hear it running. Oh, because I haven't turned the battery on. Right, let's turn the battery on. There we are, that's better. And we'll turn the fuel pump on. And I can hear the fuel pump running, so that's fine. And we're off. And now we'll turn the key, get it started. I've got a button here which turns the key one notch to the right, so that's left, right, both, and start. And it should fire up. And away we go. And let's turn the alternator on. And the alarm's gone off, that's great. And the avionics go on. And the MFD needs to be activated now. I've got a button here for the MFD, so press on there and it turns all the buttons. So I've got all the soft keys, and it's the right hand one, number 12, and the MFD's are light. And let's go back to the main view. And look at the primary flight display here. On my X-Touch, I've set the on the left here to simulate the inner and outer control of the nav, so I can choose the frequency. The left hand one does the megahertz and the right hand one does the kilohertz. You should see those changing now, going up and down. And I can switch from standby to active by pressing the top of this button here. So it's actually a knob and a button as well, so I can switch to the standby. And the same with the comms, the left hand one being the outer, right hand one being the inner. so I can change the megahertz and the kilohertz. So let's tune to the ATIS. The ATIS is 134.955. So 134.995. And switch that from standby to active by pressing that button there. And we should hear the ATIS now. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's turn that off. We'll switch that back to standby. So this is the software that's controlling everything. It's called Axis and Ohs, and you can see that as I turn a knob or press a button, it lights up the function that's being sent to Microsoft Flight Simulator. Okay, let's put in a flight plan. So we'll switch over to the right hand screen, the MFD, and on the X-Touch I've got two banks of buttons I can use. I'm using the bottom bank now for flight plans, and you also use that for the autopilot. So we're going to put a flight plan in. So press the flight plan button. And now I'm going to simulate the bottom right hand button, the inner and outer knobs again. So the left hand knob will control the outer, and the right hand one will be the inner. But let's press the button to bring the cursor up, and I'm going to put in my starting airport, which is Doncaster. So that's Golf eventually. Echo Golf. Charlie November. And there's Doncaster Sheffield. Press enter, and that's in the flight plan. And my first waypoint is Pole Hill, so that is Papa Oscar Lima, POL. And press enter, and that'll be in the flight plan. I'll complete the flight plan later. You don't need to see every step, but you've got the idea that I can simulate all the knobs and all the buttons. And probably the next thing I would do is to put in the actual pressure for today. So we'll switch back to the left hand screen, and back on my X-Touch Mini, I've got a control here for the baro, the barometer, and we can adjust that. Okay, I won't go through the other planning bits, but let's switch some lights on as if we're going to fly. So let's turn the nav lights on, taxi light on, and now I just check the parking brake. That's off and that's on, and you can see the graphic changing on the key, so you can see whether your brakes are on or off. Okay, that's all I'm going to do for this introductory video. If you think this is of interest to you, I'll do part 2, part 3 coming up soon.